Perfect timing. Hey robot makers, how are you doing? Hope you're having a good day so far. So, can you guess how many robots I built this year? That's the question we're going to look at today. A bit of a year in review of the channel, and also looking at some of the projects that we've built over the past year. So let's dive straight in. My name's Kevin. Come with me as we build robots, bring them to life with code, and have a whole load of fun along the way. We've also got some little friendies with us today. There's a Mini busily licking Alex's hand there, and Archie is just on the... You can't quite see him there. He's trying to point him. He's just there, asleep. So let's get to the keynote, shall we? Okay, so this is all about how many robots we built in the year. So I want to share some channel stats with you first. Thought you might be interested to see this from the other side of the camera, if you like. Some of the things I get to see on a sort of daily basis. So these are the top 5 videos from the channel. So you can see the very top video there. Build your own AI assistant, part 1, creating the assistant. That got over 10,000 views as of December. We're on 19th of December 2021. That's a significant number for this quite a small channel. So I'm fascinated that people have looked at that video. It's quite a long video, I think, that one as well. I think we did that as a live stream, and it teaches people how to build their own AI assistant using Python on a Mac, PC, Windows, Raspberry Pi, and so on. And it's quite able to sort of customize the code and take it in any direction you like. And there's several videos in that series, but that one is the one that sort of got the most number of views, so significant for my channel. The next one after that then is the Raspberry Pi Pico Wi-Fi module. So these Raspberry Pi Picos don't have Wi-Fi built in, so one of the most requested things that people search for is how to add Wi-Fi to these. It's a bit of a cheat really, because you're just using a different chip like the Wemos D1 Mini. You could just run MicroPython on that, but it's not quite as capable as the Pico. This has got a dual core. So yeah, that's something that I thought was interesting, and lots of other people did as well. Nearly 7,000 people have watched that video. And then the control Arduino with Python using Python and PyFormata and Fermata, which is a kind of communications thing that you run on your Arduino, and you can also run on a Raspberry Pi or another device that's actually running Python. Again, people are searching for how do they run Python on an Arduino, and the short answer is you actually can't, because it's an 8-bit chip and Python requires a 32-bit and higher chip. So that one, again, got nearly 7,000 views on that one, on watches, views. People are searching out for that one. That was quite a short video, I think, of that one. And then the next one is the Raspberry Pi 4 and VS Code. So Visual Studio Code, a lot of people searching out how to get that configured for their Raspberry Pi and how to use it. So I did a video on that. And then the next one down after that, the 5th one, I didn't include all like the top 10, just these 5. This is the Raspberry Pi Pico for Robotics. So specifically, how do we use these chips in our robots? And we built all kinds of robots using this chip throughout the year. So I thought I'd share that with you first. So overall, the channel, this was this morning when I took this, so this will have changed a little bit since then. But yeah, the overall, in the entire year, the channel got over 137,000 views. So again, that's quite a significant number for a small channel like this. It'd be interesting to see a year from now how that's any different. And again, this morning when I took the snapshot, we had 3,564 subscribers to the YouTube channel. And in our Facebook group, I think we've got nearly 20,000 members now on the Small Robots group. And I believe that number has changed again since this morning. It's probably gone up. We get about 12, 14 a day subscribers. And you can see there we've got 372 in the past 28 days. So that's kind of our growth rate. And we did 109 videos. I did do some trailers where I just sort of re-edited a video down to maybe 30 seconds for a trailer. I also tried out some YouTube short videos, and we can have a look at some of those in a bit as well. And then one of the key metrics that YouTube judges you by is how many watch hours. So how long have people's eyeballs been looking at your channel? And we achieved just 4 days ago over 10,000 hours of watch time on the channel. You need to get 4,000 watch hours to be able to be monetized on a channel, so it's usually quite an important goal, but we sort of blasted past that. And then the growth, so this is number of views per day, and you can see there's definitely a growth. We're going in the right direction. I always wonder why why is there certain peaks and troughs now. On one, that peak I think that is there, it's either that one or that one. That's because my channel was promoted by James Bruton on his channel. He did a members only video, or members video, where he showcased members creations, and I was the first person on that video, so I got the sort of key airtime, and a lot of people subscribed off the back of that. We had about 300 subscriptions, and what I find interesting is at the time that was like ridiculous. Look how low the number of daily subscriptions are, then it kind of peaks there. Now if you compare that to now, we get that kind of number on a monthly basis now, so you know, that's we're going in the right direction there. So, other stats, there's just one more page of the stats, promise. So, what are people actually looking for? How are they finding the channel? So, the most number of people are finding this through YouTube search. So, they go onto YouTube, they're searching for a particular topic, and then it suggests one of my videos as an answer. External can be like smarsfan.com, it can be Reddit, it can be quite a few other different locations. They used to give you all that information, but they've sort of hidden that away now. But yeah, that makes up about a fifth of the interest. And then things like browse features, that's just where you're sort of scrolling through and you'll see my video thumbnail suggested to you. Channel pages are when people have actually clicked on my channel and then look through the videos itself. And then suggested is when you've watched a video and then mine might come up at the end saying you might be interested in watching this. And then there's other as well. So always interesting just to see how that kind of breaks down. And then the other one, YouTube search. What are people actually searching for? So a lot of people are searching for a Raspberry Pi Pico. We've certainly done a lot of content around these little circuits, these little boards. SMARS, so I'm the SMARS fan, so no surprise that I've done a lot of video content, particularly at the first half of the year, and we can have a look at that in a minute. On SMARS robots, if you've never looked at SMARS robots, you need to go and print yourself out one now. They are the best robot for getting started with robotics. They're very, very simple mechanically, very simple electronically, and quite easy to code as well. I've done a ton of different videos, how to code in Arduino and MicroPython, so check that out. People are also searching up SMARS, as you can see there. And MicroPython, so this is my favourite language. If you've noticed, I tend to sort of steer towards MicroPython on all my videos. I just love it. It's just a really nice language that runs on these little boards. You know, you can program these in C and other languages as well, but MicroPython is really the go-to language for these, in my opinion, particularly with robotics. And then Raspberry Pi and Raspberry Pi Pico projects, not a surprise that they're getting a bit of a share as well. Okay, so let's have a look at what we did in January. So I did a couple of videos in January. What's that? 9 videos. So a nice solid start to the year. So you can see there I talked about SMARS robots, and I certainly focused on that to begin with. So there's a couple of short videos there and quite a few lives. The lives are like the Sunday ones. Every single Sunday I go live. So one of the interesting ones there is the sound and music. So have you built any projects using sound music yourself? I found that one really, really fun to do. I found the drawing the little faces, animating the expressions and all that kind of stuff, and then creating musical stuff using a beeper, a buzzer. Really, really fun. You get to learn all kinds of things as well about how notes are sound, how sounds are made using buzzers. We covered off things like Jupyter Labs as well. That wasn't that popular if you look. So what I've put on here is how long the video is in minutes, and then how many views that video got as a snapshot. So you can see there, the one that's the most popular one in January was the Raspberry Pi Pico. So the reason that is popular is that was released in January, probably the same day that I released that video. So I woke up in the morning, looked at my phone as you do, saw Raspberry Pi release this brand new chip, immediately ordered 3 of them from different suppliers, so I had a few of them. And I then went and made a video about them. So as soon as I got hold of one, I could then showcase what that was. But I think when I did this, I didn't even have one of these chips to hand. But really significant, really lowered the price of development for people. So if you want to get your own board, you could get an ESP32, an ESP8266, but they're a little bit more expensive. Like not massive, but a little bit more expensive. And at £4, you can afford to sort of hardwire this into a project and really sort of just forget about it and buy another one. So that was one of the most popular videos of that month. Again, I think it's significantly higher, at least a third higher than all the other videos on there. And then we did some about, you can see him kind of experimenting with a few things there as well. So these are, if it's like a minute or less than a minute long, then it's probably a YouTube short video. So I was experimenting to see how that worked. And you got a lot of interest, but you didn't tend to pick up many subscribers from them. I think people just thought, oh, that's interesting, and then would sort of scroll on. But they wouldn't really return to the channel and become involved. So I've not done as many of them, I think, in the rest of the year. And you can see there we've also got the Raspberry Pi OpenCat and MicroPython. So that's a project I definitely want to come back to. Somebody's requested that. I've got it on the table if I can get the right shot. I think it's that one there. You can just see there he is, Pico Cat. I've got all the other robots just here on the desk, and we'll have a look at some of them as we go through. So that's pretty much January. So yeah, the key video for January is the Raspberry Pi Pico launch with 3,000 watches on there. So how many robots did I actually build in January, do you think? So you can see there we've got the Smars robot, how to print one, that was 1. We had the sound and music one, which is 2. And I think there is another one, the Pico Cat, OpenCat. So it's actually 5. Because we had the speed build, I built another one just for that. We've talked about the Raspberry Pi Pico robot. What can Smars do? I think I printed out another one just for that too. So I actually built 5 robots in January. And by build, I mean 3D printed them, put in the electronics, powered it up, wrote some code, and got the thing running. So in February, so yes, this is about cats, crabs, and auto DIY. So in this one, I designed a little case for the, just looking to see if I can see it. It's in this box next to me. I designed a case in Fusion 360 for the Raspberry Pi Pico. Because there wasn't one available. When you buy a Raspberry Pi, you can actually get a case as an optional extra to put this in, and I designed one that looks just like the Raspberry Pi Zero, and I designed it in Fusion 360. I thought quite a few people would be interested in that one, with it being a Fusion video, and you can see there we've got it's not too shabby, over 1,000 views. Compared to the other ones, I think that one's not done too badly actually. If you look at the Pico Cat in Fusion 360, which was a live one, we barely got any views on that one, 263. So people weren't as interested in that. We did one again on OpenCat and MicroPython, which is all about servo easing. I know James Bruton talked about that in one of his videos, about how to sort of smoothly move your servos from one position to another rather than just going eh. You can make it sort of ramp up and ramp down using some nice algorithms, and that video is all about that. That one was quite popular too. And then we looked at Raspberry Pi 4 and VS Code. Because that was the VS Code was released for the Raspberry Pi. I've been using VS Code for quite a while. It's my preferred development tool. Before that I did use Atom.io, but I then switched to VS Code. Atom is a great software, but it does slow down the more extensions that you put into it. So VS Code, with it being Microsoft, I thought let's have a look at that, and I found that my preferred way to go. As much the GitHub integration as anything else. And then Smars and Auto DIY, that one's not done too badly, 500 views. I thought that might get a bit more views than that, but it didn't. And then we've got some of these more focused videos. So I did that one on the Rangefinder. So the Rangefinder that's in the Smars robot, it's in Auto DIY. Usually looks like the robot's eyes when you see them. Those things are really fun and easy to use, but actually using it with a Raspberry Pi Pico presents some challenges. So the Raspberry Pi Pico pins are 3 volts. So if you put a 5 volt supply into one of those pins, you'll actually damage the chip. I don't think it can tolerate it for very long if you supply that. You might get away with a couple of seconds, but after that, you're talking damage to the chip. So you need to use a voltage divider. You need to sort of put a resistor, maybe a 2K resistor in series with a 1K resistor, and it will divide the voltage, if you like. So it splits it in half, and then you split that half into a half, and then you end up with 3.3 volts going through there. So that means that you can use one of these rangefinders as long as the return pin, I think it's the echo pin, needs to, so the trigger pin's fine, you can send 5 volts to that, but when it comes back it needs to be 3.3. So we did that in that video and got that working, which was great, because that meant that we could then put that into a Smars robot or any other robot that's used in a Raspberry Pi Pico. Another robot that I built in February was Pico Crab. So Pico Crab is on my desk next to me, just peeping up just there. So here's Pico Crab. Now, one of the interesting challenges with Pico Crab And this is one of the lessons I keep learning again and again and again, and I'm not paying attention. It's really hard to design robots, particularly if you're designing it in Fusion 360. You're then printing the thing out, you're then assembling all the components together, and if you've not thought through everything before you've then pressed the print button, then you're going to struggle to put that together. So for example, I designed this Tamagotchi type robot. So it uses a Raspberry Pi Pico, and it has a display there, an SSD, it's an SSD 1306, I think that's called, and it's a couple of buttons as well, so you can do things like select and change menus and whatnot. And I've designed this this case for it to fit in, so this bit works quite well. You sort of get the Raspberry Pi Pico, I'll just show you on here, all fingers and thumbs here. It can sit quite nicely in there, and then it presents the charge port there. And then the idea is that this case comes over the top and just sits, oh, it's just moved out of the way there. And this is kind of what I'm trying to illustrate here. If you've not got all your design quite right, then you'll have some challenges. So this thing doesn't quite shut properly. And I tried to design it so that it would push fit over it, but I've just not done a very good job on that. I didn't really allow for the wires in there, so they sort of stand proud slightly. I'll show you that there. The wires at the back there sort of stand out a little bit, so when the case comes along to come on top of it, it's not quite got enough room to close shut. So you have to iterate your design. That's kind of the point I'm making there. You have to keep going back to this and changing it and printing it and printing it, and if it takes a couple of hours to print, that's a really slow development cycle. So I tend to start these projects and then think, oh, I've got to iterate and iterate and iterate. So with Pico Crab, if I grab Pico Crab here, so this is loosely designed on the SMARS quad robot. The feet use the exact same design from Kevin Thomas. Just move that out of the way there. And I've got these little legs again from the quad. And I eventually designed like a claw type thing as well. And that's where the servo horn goes in there. So that's okay, that part. However, that's kind of where it all falls apart really. So inside, that's where the rangefinder will sit. If I just obscure my face, there's a little faceplate that goes over that. It's kind of black that's supposed to sit in there. But I've not designed these things very well. You'd have to glue them in place, and then when you try and put the lid on, there's nowhere for the wires to come out. So again, that was a bit of a mistake. I needed to sort of allow space, and because that bottom section, if I just pull all this out here, that bottom section takes quite a while to print out because it's quite chunky. So a lot of iteration is required on these things, and that's what I always forget about when I'm designing these robots. And there's always a temptation to sort of quickly design a robot and do a video on it. So in theory it's good, we can carry on that project. It just requires quite a lot more effort redesigning the parts, and I've learnt some tips and tricks on how to do that I've shared in later videos as well. So that's February. So I designed 3 robots in February and built them, Pico Crab being one. We have the Otto robot that you can see there as well. I've got Camillo on the chat today as well. Hey Camillo. And what was the other thing I designed? The Pico Crab. I think I printed out my own version. When we designed that in Fusion 360, I actually printed that out as well. And that's in parts in my box of shame back there. So March, SMARS Mini and lots of other MicroPython and Python stuff. So in March, I designed the mini robot. Let me just grab hold of him. He's just sat there at the moment on top of an Otto robot. Let me just put these little elastic bands back on there. So this tiny little guy, this is a robot that's very similar to the SMARS robot. It runs on a Raspberry Pi Pico compatible chip. That's the RP Tiny 2040 from Pacman. So it's got its little USB-C thing there, and it has a tiny little motor board on there. And I've also got some really small batteries that you can just connect to these 2 wires, and this thing will then zip away. Now the really cool thing is on the front, it has a laser rangefinder. So that tiny little board there, it's absolutely minute, maybe a couple of millimeters wide by another couple of millimeters. It has a laser on there, so you can laser range find distances, and you can integrate that with MicroPython. Now at the time there wasn't actually a library to use MicroPython with that laser rangefinder. So I wrote one. So that's out there on GitHub, and if you view that video, you'll be able to see that. But again, this is one of the this is one of the designs I completely did in Fusion 360, and I was really pleased with how this came out. I didn't have to do too many iterations of this to get this actually working, and that one does. The reason I put the elastic bands on the wheels is they do tend to slip a little bit, but that was so much fun to do. So I'm quite pleased with the Smars Mini. On smarsfan.com, if you go to the bots section, there is a whole section on Smars Mini if you wanted to print your own out. Now, the most popular video of that month wasn't Smars Mini, it was actually the PCA 9685 board. So if I just grab this Pico Crab that's just here, that's a PCA 9685 board. And the idea is you can plug in all your servos into that board, and you can then control it with MicroPython using a Raspberry Pi Pico or an ESP32. So that video was all about how to integrate the Pico with that board. That one did really well, and what I found there is really specific videos do really well. That one was about 70 minutes long, so it's quite a long video, but people really like that one. I then did a video, as you can see there, next on the VL53L0X, which is that laser rangefinder, which is so cool. That one did really, really well. And what else we got? We got unit testing. That did better than I thought. I thought unit testing, which is all about programming and how to test your code, I thought that was quite dry and that people probably wouldn't be that interested in it, which is kind of dressed it up a little bit with Pico Cat there. And then I did a top 5 videos about top 5 Smars tips. So all things that can go wrong when you're designing or building your Smars robot, some tips there. I then did one on microbits. So I've got a number, I think I've got 3 microbits, and they are from the same, they have heritage with the BBC computer. If you look on my background, if I just move out the way, you can just see just next to the Pac-Man that's spinning around there, you can see BBC computer. So there's a shared lineage between the BBC microbit and the BBC computer from the 1980s, and that video just talks about how we can use that in our robot projects and so on. And then finally, the one that did probably the third best out of all this was the Node-RED video. So how to use Node-RED in your projects and integrating it with your robots, so you can do some really interesting things. So I used Node-RED an awful lot. I find it quite useful. So that was March, and I did one robot in March. So the Smars Mini robot. Lots of other videos about things to do with robotics, but only just that one actual robot that I built there. So you're keeping tabs on this so far. I have to go back and figure out how many we've done so far. So Build Your Own AI, the most popular video to date, was in April. So you can see there, the other thing that happened in April, I did a nice video for kind of a history of robotics. So when I was putting together the learning platform for Smars, I did some content specifically for that. So I recorded some videos that will be useful in that learning platform. If you've not been over to the learning platform, I'm really interested what you think there. It's completely free. You can go through a course on Python, on Robotics 101, how to build a Smars, how to build a quad Smars, and I think there's another one on Arduino as well. So if you go over there, have a look, give me some feedback, let me know. Honest feedback, is it rubbish, is it any good? I'd be really interested to know all that. I also designed partially designed another robot that I've only part printed out. I need to come back to that one at some point. And that was that really interesting leg motion. What's the guy's name? Theo something or other, who designed this really interesting sort of strand beast that walk along the sand beaches in his native homeland, and they just require wind power. And I thought, why don't we take that same mechanism and put it onto a Smars robot and make it walk? You only need one motor to turn the entire side, and it can even, change direction. And just mechanically, it looks really interesting. Quite a few pieces required to 3D print that, and I probably require a few goes at that, more iterations to get that just right. So the other thing that happened, as well as the paper-based robot, which has got quite a few views on that one, I was interested to see how that went, and I thought it'd be really useful for things like schools, colleges, where they haven't got 3D printers, and they just really want to quickly design a chassis that could hold robot parts. If you print in cardboard, on really strong card, you can do your own designs. You can do all different designs for that. So I thought they were quite good, and yeah, it did quite well as well. And then the thing that happened on the 13th of April is we hit 1,000 subscribers. And again, for a small channel like myself that's sort of thinking, is this going to work? Are people interested? And that was a really big major milestone. So I was so pleased we hit that. And we've blasted past that now, 3,500 plus now. But back in April, it was a very long slog to get there. So I was very pleased that we finally did that. The other thing I built there was Pico Smars. So I finally put a Raspberry Pi Pico into a Smars robot and got that working very nicely. That's now my favourite Smars robot that I have. And then the most popular video that I've done on my channel to date was the Build Your Own AI. So completely from scratch, how to write your own artificial intelligence like Jarvis from Iron Man, or any of the home assistants that I won't mention because I've got them all in this room now and they'll all go off. Yes, we showed how to do that. And lots of people agreed with me that that was a really interesting thing to do. Again, over an hour-long video, lots of people have found that very interesting. What I find even more interesting is that the subsequent videos on how to build skills for that haven't done as well. And I have put them in a playlist in a series, so if you watch one, it should follow on to the next ones. So yeah, interested to know what people think about that and what direction they think we should go with that. Now, the other thing I didn't do with the Build Your Own AI, it was purely software. So we didn't design, I mean, on the video, on the thumbnail, I purposely put my Sonny robot, which is just here, which is an in-move robot. I put him on the thumbnail because I thought that would be quite interesting, but we didn't actually integrate it into that head. And I thought that probably would be a really good next step to do that, so that, you know, when you talk to it, its mouth moves and its eyes move about. I probably need to come back to that robot. That was one of the very first things I 3D printed, and the parts don't fit together very well, and they certainly don't move very smoothly. So there's probably quite a lot of physical work to go on that one to make that work nicely. And I actually intended to use a quad robot. I've got a little quad robot just up on my my wall there, and that one is Smars Quad. It has a Raspberry Pi in it, it has a camera at the front, and if I put the Raspberry Pi, which I have actually got Raspberry Pi 2 in there, we can do all kinds of really cool stuff because of the quad power of the processor. So that could run all our AI stuff, walk around, look at you, speak back, and so on. I also did the quad robot using the microbit. That's the one on the 22nd. I did a project update, kind of going through all the videos, all the projects to date, and I also did the one on the SSD 1306, which is that little display which we have in the Pico Tamachibi robot. So that was so much fun to do. I love getting little screens working and learning how to do graphics and stuff like that. So Fernando's saying, because I need something like that on YouTube /channel or /c/Dower Robot. So Fernando has a fantastic channel which is all about he's building like an entire similar to InMove, but it's a lot of it is of his own construction, of his own design, and it's absolutely amazing. So I'm following that, following the progress that Fernando's been doing on there for quite a number of years now, I think. So if you've not subscribed to his channel, you want to check that out as well. He's fantastic. Cool, so that's everything that happened in April. So how many robots did we build? Oh, it says there, yeah, first major milestone was 1,000 subscribers. 6 robots we built in April, so quite busy month for building stuff. So over in May, this was probably the busiest month I had. I decided I would try and do a video every single day. I nearly achieved that as well if you look at the timeline. And I wanted to do really short videos, as well as doing the weekly lives as well. And the idea of doing a short video is it's quite quick to film them, and it makes you really good at editing, because to that point I probably wasn't the best editor in the world, like a long way from it. And editing requires a lot of decision making. So how do you make a video engaging, interesting, have a flow, have a story, have a kind of point, and trying to do that in a really short time frame so that you're not spending all night or days doing this. That really makes you sharpen your saw. So that was something I wanted to do in May. So let's have a quick look at some of the highlights in there. So the MPU 9250, which is the positioning, so you can accelerometer and gyroscope. That's a really interesting, board to use, and I integrated that with Raspberry Pi Pico. I think the code that was available at the time wasn't great that was out there, so I updated that and made that work for the Pico. We got the Pico working with Bluetooth. That's a really easy one to do if you've never done that before. And we also did the, and this was one I'd been waiting to do for some time. I built a Back to the Future display with 7 segments. I think it's just, do you want to just grab it there? I think it's just watch that arm doesn't fall off there. It's just underneath all them bits. Cool, thank you. So this is the Back to the Future time module. So you can just see there, it's just made up of a whole bunch of 7 segments displays, and I printed out the whole destination, present and last time departed. You've got all the little LEDs there as well, all the different colours, and all these modules are the right colour as well. They've got like yellow, green and red. But on the back it's an absolute nightmare, so you need a whole ton of cables to wire this thing up. I did have at least one row wired up, but if you're putting that onto a breadboard or something, it's just horrible to do. And the idea there is you use shift registers to be able to light up the LEDs, so that you don't actually need a million wires coming back to your Raspberry Pi Pico. You just have like 2 wires or something like that, and you can just use a shift register to manage the displays. And we do some videos, I think, on shift registers. If it's not that month, it's later on, but it might even be on that particular video. So yes, that was an interesting one. I think that was the content of that one. There was one about auto starting scripts. So for example, if you create a little project like this, that the idea is it's sort of battery powered and standalone, when you power that on, you want the script to run right away. And it's not obvious how to do that. So use boot.py or main.py, depending on whether you're on CircuitPython or on regular MicroPython. Boot.py will run just once. It's a bit like on Arduino, where you have the setup and loop, and setup just kind of creates variables, sets things, and then loop is like the main execution loop. That's the difference between boot.py and main.py. Then we've got like how to build your dream robot lab. I'm living the dream right now in this room. The one that did really well in here was the Visual Studio setup for Pico. So how do you get these Pico things working really well with Visual Studio? I use a little module plugin that's called Pico Go. It works okay. There may well be better ones out there now, but at the time that was the only one that was available. And what else have we got on there that's of interest, that's worth talking about? Managing files on the Raspberry Pi Pico, so you can actually use that in code, how you can find files, delete them, and so on. I created a robot there, which is the Weatherbot. That's one of my favourite little robots. I like this guy because, as well as being quite cute in the design, I had this idea that you could have the temperature sensor just sort of in his hand there. He just holds the sensor in his hand, and then the wires go back to the ESP8266. But then on his stomach there, he has a little servo, and his servo will display what the current room temperature is using that temperature sensor. So it moves it depending on what the temperature is in the room. And with it being Wi-Fi, it can then send that back to an MQTT broker, MQTT server, and then you can graph that or do whatever you like with it. So that was really fun. We did MicroPython and Wi-Fi, so how you can connect, like with the Weatherbot, to a Wi-Fi network and then connect to things like MQTT. We did one on keypads and the Pico. That was really fun. I was experimenting there with how to make short videos fun, and some people gave some good feedback on that one. I did the intros on them were a little bit too long, so I've kind of scaled them back a little bit. We did a remote control for the Raspberry Pi Pico. I need to come back to that one. I've not finished that one. Again, that had the curse of you need to iterate a lot designing something. So yeah, I don't know how. So when you're designing things, do you find this is a problem as well, or do you get it right first time? And I think it comes down to a skill set. So I asked the same question. I'm a member of James Bruton's YouTube membership, and when he posts like a video, he will post it a week early for members, so you can get to sort of asking questions and so on. So I said, is that your first iteration, or have you like printed 20 other of these things first? It's his first iteration each time. Now, he used to be a toy designer, so it's not a surprise really that he gets this right first time. It's just it's a skill that he has. It's hardwired into his brain. Yeah, we had one on potentiometers as well, rotary encoders, and we had one with rotary encoders and a menu where you can see what programs are actually on your Raspberry Pi Pico, what .pi programs are on there. You can use the wheel to select which one, and then you press the button to run the code. So I've got a bit of a dry throat at the moment, so I'm drinking lots of water and stuff. Okay, so that was May. So how many robots do you think I made in May, given the number of videos that are on there? It was only 2. So it was the Weatherbot and which was the other one? Which one was the other one? I think it was probably the rotary menu Pico Python thing, because that had quite a kind of robotic thing to it, and other robots have been based on that, so I kind of counted that as a robot, I think. Okay, June. So, spoiler, I didn't make any robots in June, but I did lots of MicroPython stuff. So again, doubling down on making some shorter videos and trying some other things out. I got loads of feedback about the... oh, we just had a new subscriber. Thank you for joining the channel. So, yes, the 5 things video has a really, really quirky intro. And I got a lot of feedback about that one. I think that was one of the most commented videos. Not necessarily good feedback, as in, like, people didn't enjoy it. They just sort of said, what's this got to do with a horse? Why is there a horse on the thumbnail? To make you click it, of course. And that's one of the trouble. If you have like a clickbait thumbnail, people don't like that, because they'll click on it. It doesn't follow through with the promise of what it is, so people don't tend to watch again, or they'll watch and then drop off immediately. So yeah, they don't like being cheated out of that. It's not a good way to sort of get new subscribers and keep them if you do that. I don't think I lost any subscribers on that, but I got a lot of feedback. What else have we got on there that's of interest, of notable? So yeah, the to-do list, the Alf AI Part 2. Again, given that the first video had 10,000 views, this one had like, what, a 10th, a 5th of that. But then the other one, which is the Arduino to MicroPython and Arduino to MicroPython Top 10, they did reasonably well. If it gets 1,000 views at this point in the channel size, I think it's doing quite well, actually. So yes, no robots were made in June. So if you like what I do and you want me to keep doing this kind of thing, make sure you click the like button, comment on this video whether you're watching on Facebook or YouTube, Twitch or Twitter, and also subscribe to the channel as well. That just helps tell the algorithm that this is something that you're interested in. And I do a new video every single Sunday, pretty religiously, I would say, 7 o'clock Greenwich Mean Time. I've said ish because depending what time zone we're on, whether on British summertime or on standard GMT, it should be GMT +0. Okay, and you can follow me on all the different social media, so I'm sure Alex will post a link if she hasn't already to all the different links that are in there. If you head up to smarsfan.com/about/link in bio, you can find all the different links that are there too. So on Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, obviously, World Wide Web, which is SmarsFan. Email is our mailing list, so if you're not on the mailing list, you definitely need to make sure you get signed up to that. You're going to be missing out if you don't join the list. And also Instagram as well. I'm pretty good on Instagram at putting interesting little reels and videos and whatnot on there. Okay, so that's social media. So July, guess when I went on holiday in July? I'll leave that one for you to guess on there. So the video that did the video that did the best in July was the 1 minute video, which is kind of a YouTube short, so they tend to do better anyway view wise, on how to use the thermal printer. So thermal printer fun, and you can see there the actual longer form video, which is only 11 minutes long. That one did quite well as well. We also did quite a few other ones, so there's 3 videos there following up on the AI, so part 3, 4 and 5 I think they are. So we've got face detection. We're going to be using the same kind of technology for face detection in our new project, which is the TwitcherPi. So I just grab our TwitcherPi robot. So this is a robot that you can put in on your windowsill. There's a Raspberry Pi camera which is looking out into the world, and it can detect wildlife. It can detect birds. That's the idea, and it can count the number of birds in a scene, how many birds are at a bird table feeding, what species they are, all that kind of stuff. We're going to build it out using the exact same technology as face detection, but we're going to build our own AI model. We might even use some Jetson Nano stuff to speed up the training process there. We had the Pico Starter Kit as well, which was really cool. I got sent that by, was it 52Pi, the company in China. They sent that kit for free, just said review it, and it's actually been really quite useful kit. Legitimately, I wouldn't sponsor it. I wouldn't say it's a good video, a good product if it actually wasn't a good product. So yes, when did I go on holiday? I went on holiday beginning of July to St. Ives there, and I even took my little robot. That's my Pico Smiles with me. And that's actually a legitimate Canadian stamp with a robot on it. I was quite impressed that they had robotic stamps. So do you take robots on holiday, or is it just me? So I made 2 robots in that particular month. The thermal printer one is a robot, and also the Weatherbot. Sorry, the AI stuff that we developed there as well. So August was a very busy month. I played around with shorts a lot more in that particular month to see how they would do. And again, the videos tend to do quite well. You do have to put a lot of work into creating a short. You tend to have to create like a long form video and then just cut that down the content for a short format. But it's like a completely different audience, really. So I think my sweet spot is those 20-minute type videos. The live streams are great for meeting you guys and speaking to you. But in general, I think the shorter form ones tend to perform better. But it works both ways. We need people. We need the engagement with people as well as just putting videos out there. So there's quite a few different things that we covered off there. You can see the Arduino and Python. That was the one that did the best. That's the Pythonmata sort of return video, really. That did nearly 7,000 views, which is pretty impressive. And then the Pico Wi-Fi module, that one did well as well. What else we got on there? We've got which board to use. We reviewed all different types of boards. So wireless charging, that's not doing too badly. MQTT and robotics. Object detection did really well. That was so much fun with the Jetson Nano. I really feel like I've not used that thing enough. I've got it in the very back over there. I don't know if you can see. No, you probably can't see on that view. It's just that orange robot that's just there. Do you want to pass it actually? Yeah.
The big one.
Yeah, the big one. So I made a big Smars robot. Where are we? Thank you. Purposely designed just so we can have the Jetson Nano in there. So it's got plenty of room. I've not actually put like an internal thing, but this is like a massively scaled up Smars robot. And the idea is you can put a Raspberry Pi camera just on the inside of this faceplate. So that's what that's designed for. I need to put some wheels on this as well, make this so that it can actually move around. But yeah, the Jetson Nano is a really, really cool board. It's very similar to a Raspberry Pi, kind of how it works. But it has that massive graphics processor on there, so it can do machine learning, training and model usage in real time really, really quick. Okay. What else we got on there that's of use? So we did one that did really well on the NRF24L01, which is that RF module. Loads of people asked questions about that in the chat, and I think that was actually somebody that asked in our Facebook group, how do you use this? They had 2 of them and they couldn't get them to work properly. And it's all to do with that unique number. I think people sort of missed that out. Cool. So yes, how many robots do you think I made in August? Oh yes, the other thing I forgot to mention there, we had our first Meet the Maker video in August as well. So that's a series where we invite a guest on the show, so it's not just me talking. We've got somebody else who's interesting to you guys to talk about robots, and we had Ovi from Nigeria talking about Destro, his robot dog. So yes, we had 6 robots built in August, so we're quite busy building robots there. And then September, so a couple more robots there. We have the Lego ones. We had videos on inverse kinematics. We had some virtual pets, which is that one I keep holding up there. And we also met Camillo as well, who's on the chat today. So we looked at the inventor of the Auto DIY robot. So I'm really, really stoked to get Camillo on. Never actually spoke to him before, so it was really good to actually speak to him in person on the video. So some of the videos that did really well in that particular month, the inverse kinematics one did really well. Grab Archibald. Yeah, Archie. Oh. You just need to come and say hello for a second. So yes, we had the inverse kinematics video. Loads of comments on Reddit about that one. I think there were a lot of people who struggle with that as a concept, and that was quite a cool video to talk about, to film. And that was off the back of the tic-tac-toe robot. So somebody designed a, was it called Tico? And it used an Arduino Nano, and I decided to do the exact same project but using a Raspberry Pi Pico instead. So that one is called Pico Tico, and it plays tic-tac-toe as a robot. That one is on the desk as well. I think we just pressed the button there. That's just here. So it's got its screen on, it's got its pen. Back over there. Really, really fun to do that project. So yeah, I've not quite got the angles right on that one. I think I need to just go back to that one and get some of the trigonometry corrected on there so that it draws nice straight lines instead of arcs. We had the ESP32 camera. That one's done quite well. And one of the fun things for me to play with was the Lego Mindstorms robot. So we did a comparison between the Spars robot and the Lego Mindstorms, but really just give me an excuse to play with Lego for a bit. So yeah, I really enjoyed September as a month. Let's see how many robots we built in September. Oh yes, that was also the month where we started posting videos to Reddit. And it's a really brutal place, Reddit. There were some people, when I put a post up there, and I got all kinds of very negative feedback from people. I think they just like to complain and nitpick over stuff, but it's always a learning experience. So 4 robots were built in the month of September. So I think that was the inverse kinematic one, the tic-tac-toe, the Lego one, the ESP32, and the Pico Tamachibi one. And October, so this was a Halloween month, so we had the virtual pet. That's where I actually made this little robot. This one featured in the Raspberry Pi magazine as well, the official Raspberry Pi magazine. I also designed and built the Pac-Man robots. So we've got the Ghost robot that's a line follower, and we've also got the full Pac-Man robot, which is a line follower. So if I go to the that view there, you can just see just there, that's the Pac-Man robot. So it's got a Smars robot underneath, and this kind of just sits on the top as a chassis. And we also have just there the Ghost robot. You can just see it's got the little line follower thing just out the case there. And that chassis, that filament that's used is glow-in-the-dark filament, so it glows green. So let's just go back to that. So they did reasonably well, I think. The best video in that particular month, though, was the installing ROS on a Raspberry Pi 4 or 400. So ROS is the robot operating system. It's a really advanced topic for robotics. So if you're just getting into robots, probably something to leave till a little bit later on. We did another Meet the Maker. We met Simon Monk of Monk Makes. So his stuff is everywhere. Whenever you're looking online to buy some components, you'll see his stuff pop up. So it's a real treat for me to sort of speak to him in person. So yes, very interested to speak to him. I'm going to put that dock down there. There we go. Okay, Docker as well. We played around with Docker in ROS. Docker is something I've used very heavily in the Clustered Pi project, which we're going to move on to shortly. And in fact, when I've been doing this Twitcher Pi project with the this uses Docker. So it's a really nice way of sort of containerizing, compartmentalizing software so that you can very quickly install it on things without worrying about dependencies and all that. Of course, it was Halloween as well, so we had a Halloween kind of special where we looked at Halloween robots, which is what I designed the Ghost robot for originally. And I thought, I can't have a Ghost robot and then not design and print a Pac-Man robot. It's a really interesting project to do because I designed that one from scratch, both the Ghost and the Pac-Man, and I had to slice that up so I could 3D print it. If you try and print like a globe all in one go, it's quite tricky. So I wanted to be able to print it in 3 steps and then glue them all together. And I've got a little bit of warping on a few of them, so they didn't quite glue together as smoothly as I would have liked, but I could fill that in and paint over it if I really wanted to. The Raspberry Pi 2 was also launched in... Raspberry Pi 02 was launched in October, so the lucky people have managed to get hold of them. I don't think you can get hold of them at the moment. They are going to release some more, another 250,000 I think in the new year. And they're an upgrade to the Raspberry Pi Zero. So they're now quad core, still only got 512 megs of RAM, but you can do so much stuff on them. So if you can get hold of them, definitely get hold of them. They're very good for robots. It's about 2 robots in that month. The Pet and the Pac-Man. Probably could have said 3, to be fair, for the Pac-Man one. And then in November, so we had lots of fun with the musical dancing robots, the musical instrument that I created, the theremin, the Therapy as I call it, with some rangefinders and some Python, and also using that new Raspberry Pi 2 in that project too. But the video that did the best in that month was the Upgrading Raspberry Pi OS Bullseye release. So interestingly, they've actually stepped back a little bit. You can download... so when they released the Bullseye release of Raspberry Pi OS, they changed the camera module. So it used to be Pi camera, so it was very easy to take pictures and all that kind of stuff. But I believe there was some proprietary code in there that they had to pay a license for. So they've gone to libcamera, which is like an open source camera module for Python, and they haven't released the software for Python yet. So they've released this thing, they removed Pi camera, but then they didn't give you an option to be able to replace that with something else. So because of that, there's a bit of an issue. So they then released a legacy version of Bullseye that has the camera module installed, the old Pi camera module, and it's actually very simple. If you've got the latest version of Bullseye on there, you can go to the Raspberry config, you can then select from there the interface, and then the legacy camera is there, and you can enable the legacy camera just by selecting that and rebooting it, and then you've got Pi camera back, so all your stuff will work again. So that's pretty cool. We had to look at the Raspberry Pi Pico and RFIDs. We introduced the Clustered Pi, which is a project that's ongoing at the moment. I'm learning all about Docker and how to build out your own little mini data center using Raspberry Pis and Ansible and Docker and Portainer. So many cool things, and Grafana as well. We're going to be looking at that in the next couple of weeks. And we had Liz Clark from Blitz City DIY. That was a really fun interview to do. I'm really surprised that video didn't do better than the 246 views that we've got there, but maybe I didn't market it well enough. And of course the how to build a dancing robot. That was a kit that I got sent by Camillo. So that's just at the back there. If I go to that view, you can just about see it behind there. There's the yellow robot. Maybe you can see it just there. Just there. That's our dancing robot. So he sent a kit with the little LED display for the eyes. So much fun to build that. So you definitely get yourself one of them if you've not got one already. And you definitely want to print yourself out on Auto DIY. It's a really fun project. It's I would say that if you built a Smart robot, that's the next robot you have to build after that. So yes, Raspberry Pi released the Raspberry Pi OS, that's supposed to say Bullseye release, that broke the Pi camera library, and more Clustered Pi stuff is coming soon, so we can integrate with our robots. So the whole purpose of building a Clustered Pi is it has all the other components that we need, like MQTT, Grafana for sort of graphing things, Node-RED. We can very easily install them on our cluster, and we can tear our cluster down and build it up just using code. It's very simple to do. So I built 4 robots in November. Really enjoyed November as a month for building robots. And then in December, we're only halfway through December, or well, 2/3 through. So I did a video on how to set up passwordless login. So that's not having a password, it's using SSH keys and how to do that. So you can log into your Clustered Pi, or if you've got a number of Raspberry Pis, you can log into them without having to type a password in. So it's just really easy to run scripts and things. And that's using Ansible as well. We've got a video on how to automate with Ansible. Again, that didn't do that well. Maybe in the long term that'll pick up. But one that did really well, and I expect, given that it's only been released a couple of days ago, this one will probably do a lot better longer term as well, which is Threads. How to use both cores in MicroPython on your Raspberry Pi Pico or ESP32. You can use both cores and speed up your code. And then the Twitch Pi, which is the new project, which we're just launching at the moment, which is how to make your own AI bird detection system, and you can capture the data, graph it and all that kind of stuff, build your own AI model using our Raspberry Pi Zero. So we've got a couple of other videos to do this month, live ones. So on the 19th, which is today, we've got this one. We've got the one on the 26th on Boxing Day, and that's probably going to be on Twitch Pi as well, or Clustered Pi. It's going to be one of those two things. So yes, a Merry Christmas to everybody that's watching as well. So that month I built one, which is the AI bird detection Twitcher Pie. So this is how many videos we did, 109 videos in 2021. There's all the different thumbnails from all those different videos. You can see there's a whole different range of types of thumbnail. I've been experimenting to see, because one of the things that YouTube presents when people, see your thumbnails, it gives you the data back on how well that's performed. So if you've got a really bad thumbnail, so if it's too much text or it's not really clear what it's about, people don't tend to click on it. So the ones that have got clearer images, they're the ones that tend to get the better performance. So you don't even get people watching if it's not a good thumbnail. So you'll see the later thumbnails are probably a lot clearer than the ones at the beginning. And that's just, again, a bit of a skill just to try and make those better. So how many videos? Who has been counting along as we've been doing this? Let's see in the chat. I'm going to give you a couple of seconds to feedback to me how many videos you think I've actually... Sorry, how many robots I've built throughout 2021. Is it 5? Is it 10? Is it 20, 30, 40, 50? What do you think it is? I'll give you a couple of seconds to have a decide of that. Yeah, we'll have a bit of dog camera while you decide that. So there's Minnie in a little dress. She's dressed up as Santa's little helper there. Archie's just fast asleep. He's the most useless dog. He's just asleep all the time. Now, the reason that Minnie's trying to scratch into that case there is not because she wants to get the robots that are inside. It's because there is a treat inside. Do you want to give her the treat, Alex? She loves these greenies. They're like a little bone, but they're really good for the teeth, actually. So Tina says 22 robots. So Tina says 22. Let's just make a note of that. Any more for any more? Halil says 20-ish. Fernando says 48. Any more for any more? We're going to go back to the slide in a second. I'll give you another couple of seconds to chip in if you want to put your guess out there. Okay, let's go back over to the keynote. And I'm going to reveal what it is. It was 36 robots. So who got closest to that? Adam says 42. That's not bad. That's, let's say Tom said 27. Richard said 31. I think Richard's probably the closest, actually. There's a bit of a lag between me saying this and the comments coming through, so I'll give you that. I think Richard was probably the closest. So let's just put you up on the screen there. Richard says 31. You get the round of applause and you get the... where's the... There you go. An applause. Well done, Richard, for guessing that. So yes, that's quite a lot of robots. So I'm quite competitive with myself, so I'm sure next year I'll try and beat 36 robots. And... it's got to be something physical. It's got to be something that does something functionally, runs code, takes sensor readings of some kind. Ideally, move about, but not all robots have to move about. So what was your favourite video from 2021? Let me just put up the next slide there. My mouse has just disappeared. There we go. So let me know what your favourite video was, and I'll just talk you through a few series. So what I tend to do with my videos, when I'm thinking about a video, I might think, so say like Twitcher Pie, for example, I might think, how can I make this, how can I break this down? Because there's quite a lot to go through. So I might do one on like how to design this, 3D print it. I might do one on how to set up the software, or, the sort of software side of things in Python. If there's electronics involved, I might show how to do that as a separate video. Or if it's a software build, but it's quite complex, I might break it down into a number of steps. So I tend to put them in a series, a playlist on YouTube. And if you watch one, you can then binge watch the rest of them in that series too. And I'm aware that there's probably some series that I've started and then not finished. And there's probably a reason for that as well. So Pico Cat, for example, I got to a point where I needed to sort of think about battery and power and physical design and the iteration that's involved in getting your design right, and that's probably where I paused on that one. The ROS series, really into ROS. I've got the a little module there for the laser rangefinder. That can do positioning and location. That's one of the things I really want to get into, so we can put this on a SMARS robot, or an auto DIY or whatever, and it can find itself in the room and it can map out that room. It can do that just by this one laser rangefinder. I think they're about £100, these things, to buy. I think there are more expensive, better quality ones, but they start at about £99, and that one's an RP LiDAR is the manufacturer of that one. So yes, that one just plugs in and works straight away with ROS. Very, very easy to get that working. So that's what I want to do next. I hit a bit of a roadblock just because of my setup. I was trying to run ROS 2 and there was like ROS 1 code and it didn't work very well. So I need to reach out to people in the Reddit group for that one to get a bit of guidance, and then we can carry on that series. I've got a whole playlist on MicroPython, so if you want to know anything about MicroPython, jump into that playlist. There's a ton of videos on there. It's my favourite language, so I'm probably going to create a lot more on there too. And then the Threads one, well, the Raspberry Pi Pico, OpenCat and MicroPython, or OpenCast as it says there, OpenCat and MicroPython. Again, that's a bit of a bucket list. There's loads of different videos in there. The Raspberry Pi Pico for beginners is videos specifically aimed at people getting started with the Raspberry Pi Pico and probably MicroPython. And then the one that I'm working on at the moment is Clustered Pi, which I've got running just behind me over here. So that little box just there, just there, with all the flashy lights on it and the little console above it. That's my current Clustered Pi setup. It's a prototype. It's got 4 Raspberry Pi 4s in it. I think they've got 8 gig, 4 gig, 2 gig and 1 gig memory configurations. I bought them as they got released. But they're all running 32-bit versions of Raspberry Pi OS. So once the 64-bit version comes out, I'll flatten that one, like wipe all the cards and set it all back up. But because it's using Ansible and Docker, it's very easy to reset that one up. So yes, so what was your favourite video of the year? That's what I'd like to know as a sort of wrapping up thing. And we'll now go over to the comments on the chat. So let me just come back over to me for a second. Let's see what you guys have been talking about on there. You've been a little bit quiet today, I think, because I've been talking at you so much. So are you getting any gifts for the holiday season that are to do with robots? So I think under there I've got a big Lego robot Mindstorms. I think it's the 51515 kit, the Lego Inventor kit I think it's called. So I've got that one. It's got about 3 or 4 different robots that you can build there. I've also got the Lego Star Wars one, which has this module in there. The interface for it to program it is really nice. I've also got the Raspberry Pi Lego hat, so you can plug in some of these modules directly to that hat and then program it yourself in Python. But these are really fun to build. Feel a bit of a cheat though, because you're building somebody else's robot rather than making your own, but it's still good fun. And it has some interesting modules on there. It has like a colour sensor, so it's not a camera, it just detects different types of colour. So are you getting any gifts for Christmas is the question, that are to do with robots in any shape or form. So let's have a look at some of the comments on here then. So Richard said, I'd like to thank my backroom team. AI and cluster, awesome. Yes, I like those ones too. The AI one, because it was so much fun to do. And I think the thing that surprised me about the AI one was how easy it was to create your own AI. I do need to come back to that one and use something like Elasticsearch to do intention, so you can figure out what the person who's saying a command, what that command is meaning, and breaking that meaning down. Like there's depth to that. There's quite a lot you can get into there. So how do you break? Is it just the words that you break down that you search on, or is it groups of words? Can you feed that through an AI itself to get the meaning? There's quite a few things that we can do there. So Tyler says he made 2.5. So that's the question, obviously, isn't it? How many robots did you make this year? So Tyler's made 2.5. So it says, I don't get the reference. You need to read The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. Ah, right. So Adam's saying, yeah. So just so you know, Alex, I'll mansplain that one. In The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, there is a massive supercomputer, isn't there, which is the Earth. And it's designed to come up with the ultimate answer to the question, which is the meaning. What is the meaning to life, the universe, and everything? And the supercomputer Earth, just before it's about to read out, I think it gets exploded by some Vogons, doesn't it? And the answer that it came up with was 42. That's the meaning. That's the answer to life, the universe, and everything. So whenever you see the word 42 anywhere, it's something to do with that. So Richard said, I think the Pac-Man Ghost would be there are all sorts of different parts in them, and they can follow a line. And the potential to use AI with it as well. Absolutely. Yeah, I felt like I kind of rushed to the finish on that one. What I wanted to do was have the Ghost Robot line following, and then the Pac-Man following that one, but using a different technique. Thank you, Joel, for joining the channel. So yeah, I thought there was, we could use different things there. And maybe if I'd have printed out 4 robots, I have actually bought enough filament. I'm just looking up my filament collection there. I've got glow-in-the-dark green, glow-in-the-dark blue, glow-in-the-dark red, and glowing-in-the-dark yellow, I think. I've got all the different colours for the different ghosts. So if I'd had 4, we could have had all the different, in Pac-Man the game, the different ghosts have different algorithms for finding Pac-Man. Some of them will head directly at him, some of them diagonally come at him or try and look where he was last, and there's different algorithms anyway. It's quite clever that they did that in 8 bits. So yeah, I enjoyed the Pac-Man one as well. So what else have we got on here? Yes, The Hitchhiker's Guide, very good audiobook. It's one of my favourite books actually. He's one of my favourite authors. So what else we got? So Adam says, I built 5, had 3 colds, just a part fails and only one finished. I've got a bit of a cold at the moment. It's not COVID, well, luckily. But yeah, I've got a bit of a dry throat growing on at the moment.
So does this dog.
So does that dog. Oh, Minnie the dog there is having a bit of... There's Archie. Look at his massive head. Okay, so... Adam's complaining about autocorrect there. Richard says, Lego is just amazing, isn't it? I think that's one of the things that got me into robotics in the first place, was just like, what could we do with that? So George says, have you considered adding Coral TPU to the clustered Pi for edge computing? Ooh, I shall have to look at that. Coral TPU. So what does that do? I shall have to look into that. I'm not familiar with that. I'm definitely thinking about adding in the Jetson Nano, so that we've got some real grunt there for doing some real-time AI stuff, training the model particularly. So Fernando has said, no, just 2 legs. And I've been following the build of the legs, the feet, the hips and everything. Really, really impressed. I'm really worried for you as well, Fernando, that you're gonna stand up Dara the robot and he's just gonna face plant and all thing. So I've actually dropped my my robot once. This one dropped on the floor, and this is it's one of the first PLA robots that I built. I think it's like PLA and not PLA plus. It just shattered to pieces. I think I had to like glue bits together. A lot of the places where the screws went in, they just shattered, but nothing that super glue couldn't fix. So I'm really worried that your robot's gonna just I'm sure you're going to engineer it so that doesn't happen. Aunt Malin says her favourite one was the Weatherbot. This little guy. I think I need to make his eyeball move around as well. It's very simple mechanically inside. It's just that one servo, but I could put some feet on him or something like that, or maybe little tracks. That maybe be some way to improve that one. Richard says, isn't that thing Jeff Geerling is trying to get working, the Coral TPU? Ah, I see. Yes. So, yeah, I definitely follow Jeff. If you're not following his channel, what are you doing? No, he's amazing, Jeff. I have a few chats with him on Twitter. If you Twitter and Instagram, we used to have a bit of a backwards and forwards on there. So looking up Jeff Geerling, he does a lot with Pi computing. He built one of the largest Pi clusters, I think. I think there was somebody else who's recently beat him with like 5,000 Raspberry Pis in there, some university. So a lot of universities will do lots of clustering stuff as part of their curriculum, parallel processing, and it's really expensive to build parallel computers, so Raspberry Pis are dirt cheap. And my idea is we want to be able to build a really cheap Raspberry Pi Zero cluster, and there's a few challenges with that, but we can do it. And one of the really cool pieces of feedback I got from people, I just grabbed one of these modules. So I don't think I've got a Raspberry Pi Zero to hand. Maybe I have actually. So this was the module that I designed for this, and the idea was that this would sit in here like so, and it would just sort of push fit into there. And it kind of nearly does, but not quite. I've not got the tolerances quite right, and I think I'm going to redesign this so that actually it just screws into place using the mounting holes. But somebody said, why don't you make it so instead of it being this way around, if I just show you here, where the power and the USB are pointing in the wrong direction. Why don't you point it inwards like that, so that they point into this cavity here? So if this is actually in front of this, and there is enough room for the power, they can actually go into that little tunnel area there. So I've redesigned it, and I'm currently going to print that out. That's going to be one of the things I look at over the sort of Christmas period, so we can build that out as a Raspberry Pi Zero cluster. So Fernando says it won't fall, it'll have an arm in the back. Awesome. Holding it, absolutely. Well, that's what they do with Boston Dynamics. They always have that big harness, don't they, holding it up? I think even James Bruton with his Open Dog, he has like a harness that it sits in. He doesn't let it just. He must have had robots fall over. He's built a lot of walking robots. He was obsessed with it. So Coral thinks some sort of AI. All right, I shall look into that. I was interested to know what the T stood for in TPU. So Jeff is trying to get a lot to do with the RPI. Yes. He gets all the early releases from Raspberry Pi Organisation as well, because his channel's doing so well. So yes. And that's why we're struggling to find RPIs at the moment, because business keeps buying them up for clusters. There is that, and there is the fact that there's the substrate shortage at the moment. So all chips that are manufactured have this problem, and that substrate is it's the bit between the silicon and the copper, and only a couple of companies, I think it's like 12 companies in the world that make that, and it's very expensive to make. There's no profit really in it, so there is a shortage. So that's a good idea, rotating it around. And Jeff's red shirt, he has a different character that has a red shirt that always does like naughty things. And he's been cutting them up. So yes, 2 companies. Is that all it is, Adam? That's nuts. 2 companies that make substrate. So no wonder there's a shortage. And car manufacturers are being hit by this. Where I work as a project manager, we're trying to get hold of Cisco networking equipment. You cannot get hold of this stuff for love nor money. We ordered it back in like May, and some of it's only just arriving now. So it's a real challenge for everybody worldwide. And I was really surprised that Apple were able to sort of release new phones and new stuff. But I guess they're at the top of the queue when it comes to managing manufacturers. They probably own those 2 companies anyway that do that, or have shares in it, I would think. Cool. So looking at the time there, I think it's probably time to wrap up the show. Thank you so much for joining me today. Is there anything else, Alex, you wanted to cover off?
There was one comment asking about, would you do a room tour?
Oh, right. So Alex says, I'm just going to look through. Alex says there was a comment that we do need to cover off just before I finally wrap up.
It was by...
let me just find it. Let's see if I can see it. Sorry, guys.
Quite near the top.
Just trying to find it. Suspense is killing me.
Keep going up.
Going up.
Keep going up.
Okay. Talking about, I didn't see all these comments. People talking about a museum. Camilo was saying that I built more robots than he has. What else we got? Talking about the crab things.
That's my response.
What else we got?
There it is.
Aha, so Hallie was saying, I would like to see your maker room. Did you share it before? I don't think I've done a room tour, but I can certainly do a video on that for you. I can very quickly talk to you about the room. So I've got a number of cameras that I can point to sort of show specific things, but I've got 2 3D printers. First of all, I've got an Ender 3 Pro and an Ender 3 version 2. So they're my main workhorses for sort of 3D printing things. And the reason I've got 2 is because when you're printing things out, like for example this kit, I could print both parts at the same time, and it just speeds up the whole process. I believe James Bruton has 16 3D printers, so you must have an entire room for doing that. I've got these 2 very large desks here, and there's another 2 on this side here. And this is where I do all my sort of making, if you like. So I've got a whole load of tools up here that I don't know if I can go to that back view. If I go to that view there, you can't really see that there. You can see my setup here. I've got all the lighting and so on. But yeah, on this wall here, I've got a whole load of tools, and I've got a whole load of components in these drawers here, just like regular components. A whole bunch of Raspberry Pis, ESP32s, that kind of thing. And some little drawers up here have got little specific components in them, like microbits and rangefinders and stuff like that. And then on the back, this is where I store a lot of the partially built projects or big parts for projects. So this robot that's just here, that's the torso for an in-move robot, the head, which is just here. And I think you can probably see just there, that's the hand, and there's another hand just there, and that's his arm. What else have we got? We've got the that's a little turntable that's got the Pac-Man on it, and you can see there a classic Mac and an oscilloscope that I've not used yet. So I've got quite a few bits and bobs, and then above and below, so you mightn't be able to see on that view there, no you can't quite see it. There's a whole thing above me here, which is, maybe I need to get another camera out, where I store all the 3D filament. So that's all in sort of vacuum bags with silicone gel in there to keep out the moisture. But I do have air conditioning in this room. At the back there, there's a heat pump, and that keeps the room at a perfect temperature and means that the filament doesn't get too damp or anything, because I'm actually in the bottom of my garden, or the top of my garden, in a wooden structure, a summer house. It's also where I work from home. What else is the work talking about? So I've also got a number of posters up here. You can't quite see them, but the posters are for, in fact, if I just grab the dog camera for a second, I just grab this. So this little camera here, I'm just going to walk you around the room with this. Right, there we go. So you can see there we have, that's the overhead camera that points at a lot of the projects. So I can move that camera around there. It's a good quality camera. We've got some of the SMARS robots there. So that's the Raspberry Pi one, the microbit one, and then we've got some of the other SMARS robots there. And there's some of the tools that we have, and these posters, you can download them from the Buy Me a Coffee shop if you want to help support the show. And they've got all the pinouts for quite a lot of the popular boards there. You can see the other storage things there and the movie posters. So those movie posters are all robot posters: Forbidden Planet, Westworld, Metropolis, 2001, The Day the Earth Stood Still, and Short Circuit. And you can also see there the air conditioner. You can see the in-move robot a bit better there. And what else have we got on the drawers? The drawer of shame with all the different bits and bobs in it, various wires. I've got some other computers down here as well with me. And then there's my setup, and then above there you can see all the filament that we've got, and then some worky stuff as well. There's my other messy desk there with my printer, 3D printer, and the other 3D printer. It's looking a bit worse for wear, that one. It had a bit of an incident, this printer. You can probably see there where it piled drive down into the bottom of the heat bed, but it still works fine. It's still my main workhorse. Then across there is the other one as well, which is the Ender version 2. And then this is my YouTube setup. So I've got the microphone here. That's what I speak to you on. It's on this sort of under the desk arm thing. I've got the screen there. You can see I've got this software that's called Ecamm Live that enables me to see what you can see. And I've got the little thing down here with a chat on it. I've got two monitors, and I've got this thing called a Stream Deck, which enables me to sort of change scenes very easily, or do things like if I press that button there, you get this nice little thing pop up that shows all the media links. I've got my show notes there, just literally print out every time. The main host camera that's just there, I've got a little ring light, a key light. There's another key light there, which is for overhead stuff. So when we're doing like the overhead stuff, you can see that there. What else if we just go to, if I turn that off, and I'm just going on my Stream Deck here, I've got these different buttons. If I press that button there, I can turn off that light like so, or turn it back on. Similar with that one, I can turn that light off or on just using these Stream Deck buttons. So that makes the whole thing a lot easier to do, and I can keep all my show flow working well there. What else have we got? So there's a whole bunch of wires and stuff behind here. That's for things like the camera. There's a capture card that goes into the software. All the different cameras. There's another camera there, which is the GoPro one. For some reason, that's not working very well at the moment. Got that camera there. There's the one that's up the back there. And then this is the camera. This camera here is the one that's it's either up in that little gap just there, or at the moment it's just sort of sitting on here. as a sort of dog camera pointing at our doggies, like so. So there you go, that's a bit of a quick room tour if you're interested in that kind of thing. Okay, so I hope that satisfied your interest for all the stuff that happens in my room there. Let's have a look and see if there's anything else on there. So Fernando's saying, is there a link to those posters? He needs them for his makerspace. So on Buy Me a Coffee, so, let me just pull up the that one there. If you go to buymeacoffee.com/Kevin McAleer, you'll find on there is a whole bunch of downloadable things. I think they're only about £4 to download, and that's for all of the posters. As I get more boards, I will add to them. So I'm aware there's no M5 stack stuff on there yet, but I'm sure we could add that to that pack as well. But they're really nice to be able to print out and have them, and I sort of grab them off the wall if I'm working on something, and I can just quickly refer to what all the pinouts are. Where's the grounds, where's the 5 volts, all that kind of stuff. But yeah, really appreciate if you want to do that, you can do. You can also join a subscription. We have 3 different subscriber membership levels there as well, if you want to sort of help support the show longer term. But you know, do that whenever you feel comfortable doing that, basically. Cool. So hope that satisfied your understand, you know, your desire to understand how I organize stuff like that. So yeah, just lots of storage. It's all IKEA storage, these things. I think all the desks are from IKEA because they're quite cheap, quite easy to replace. And it's really great having a place to be able to build things. I've got these 2 great big desks to be able to sort of work on projects, leave them, come back to them, and so on. So Adam says, organise, that sounds like hard work. So yes. And Halil, I started out, if you look at some of the very first videos in my channel, you'll see a staircase behind me, because I was literally doing that in the living room, and I had my 3D printer in the living room. But when the lockdown happened, we took the opportunity to sort of build a summer house and put everything in there. So I had to sort of hardwire electric, so I can get all my stuff working, powered, lighting and heating, and also internet. So I've got 2 cables, Ethernet cables, that come up into this summer house, which is away from the house. So I think I talk about some of them in the early videos as well. Cool. So yeah. So Alex says there, Jenny, my wife, hates wires, and wires are the one thing you can't get away from if you're making things, unless it's like that little robot, that little console that's battery powered. Cool. So I think we'll leave it there. I think we've gone way over time. But yes, I've really enjoyed this video, having a look at the review of the year, just seeing how many videos we've made and how many robots we've made this year. 36 robots, which is just nuts. 109 videos, which is just insane. I've no idea how many hours that is, but it's a lot of stuff. So thank you for joining me on this. I shall see you next time, and have a really great Christmas if you're celebrating Christmas, and I shall see you very soon. So thanks for watching. Bye for now.